Welcome to Sentiment Sessions, where we explore the art of all things healing, embodiment, and transformation. I'm your host, Tyla, and today we're going to be delving into a subject that is often considered taboo, and that is pleasure. For many of us, pleasure has been something that has been conditioned to be shameful or embarrassing or something that we have to earn. But I have someone here today that's going to help us understand it from a different perspective, a leader in this space. And let me just introduce Dr. Joi. Dr. Joi is with us. And she's going to be talking to us about how do we reclaim pleasure in our lives and how we can do things probably a little bit different and challenge the status quo. So Dr. Joi, I want to welcome you to Sentiment Sessions.
Thank you, Tyler, for having me. I always love platforms where I get to share tricks, tips, and tools about love. Hence my jacket.
I know, love. Right? I'm loving it, girl. I'm loving the colors. I'm ready to take it off and just wear it. I mean, it's really symbolic of where I am in my journey with respect to self-love, right? And just stepping into this whole new energy. So tell me, when we talk about awaken to pleasure, let me first start off by saying we had event schedule, right? So this event was about us bringing this to the city of St. Louis, right? To showcase how we awaken to pleasure from the inside out, loving ourselves, whether it be single, whether it be in relationships, and things of that nature. Girl, the feedback that I was getting, I was getting calls like, is this like going to be like an orgy? I mean, it was just all over the place. So I think after all that craziness, we decided let's pull it back. Let's turn this into a conversation, get people kind of introduced to the whole notion of what it means to awaken to pleasure, as opposed to having this run kind of, I think it's different from where you've been in the past. You know, I know you're new to St. Louis. What are you seeing in it is before we delve into what's awakened to pleasure, tell me about the differences you've seen between this one city to the next in terms of how they view pleasure.
Well, I will say, let me start internationally. Let me start with countries. So I'm an intimacy coach, and being able to research intimacy in different aspects in different countries. Intimacy is physical, but it's also spiritual, it's also emotional, and it's intellectual.
Come on.
So being able to merge, and what I like to say in kind of classroom terms, is your sexuality. So human sexuality, or for some people, the last time they've actually had like a reliable source talk to them about physical sexuality things is high school health class. And it may have been your PE teacher.
Exactly, the same person. You're right.
So, like, there's, this gap in that education. And then there's psychology. And that's because your biggest sex organ is your brain. And even when we talk about pleasure outside of sexuality, we're still talking about dopamine and oxytocin and all of these different hormones that work together. And knowing and studying like the people and why people do things and their behaviors, that's the psychological part. And then we got human development in there.
Oh, right.
Because we go through different stages in our lives. So that is understanding teenagers all the way to understanding the libido and how it operates in your 20s, because that's when, for men, they're at the height of their libido and their pleasuring. But then you get to mid-40s for some women where they are then at the height of their pleasure, but then you got some partners at that point that's also on medication. They've been through some stuff and not quite sure of how that works. And then you get women in perimenopause, menopause. You've got erectile dysfunction, erectile dissatisfaction. Absolutely. And
Exactly.
so all of those different kind of topics are just on the pleasure side of also understanding where your spirituality comes in
Yes.
and how much of an influence, even growing up, some of the messages that came through religious organizations may have impacted, as you mentioned,
Exactly.
how you feel about pleasure, self-pleasure, being in a pleasing situation, because you might even be a self-proclaimed people pleaser, but don't really know the pluses and minuses of that. So how do you
Yes.
communicate still your
Yes.
pleasure and what you desire if you haven't even sat with what is it that I like?
Come
And
on.
understanding the basics and then knowing the different ways of communicating, which is verbal and nonverbal.
Exactly.
So many different things, and I'm not even gonna get deep into the emotional side of it, but
Exactly.
we just have so many different
This
ways.
is a broad topic. When I think
Yeah,
about it, it's everybody's on a different page, right?
right.
Everybody's on a different page with their sexuality and how they embrace it. But let's just start with the basics. Say for
Well,
someone.
let me still answer your question.
Oh, okay.
Because I went through all of that about saying like internationally, because I've lived in Dubai for 2 years.
Okay.
So when we talked about like taboo topic, public display of affection is
Exactly.
like the basics where
Yeah,
that, like,
yeah.
no, you don't do
Yes,
that.
yes.
But then you get to some of your Caribbean areas where you can have so much more display of affection. I was actually down in Brazil, and I was like, they don't kiss, they suck face. Like they all into it. But
Wow.
that's where it's very sensual, very
Yeah.
sexual for like a lot of things that you see. And then again, talking about like the Caribbean as far as like what customs are appropriate and
Yes.
what like culturally things that are acceptable. So even now, just saying like in the US, we have cultures that are influencing different individuals, and there are some things that I would say in general in the US is a kind of commonality about pleasure and sensuality and sexuality, and all of it becomes taboo because there is a point of let's keep this a secret, and that is for some people stimulating. And for some other people, keeping things a secret becomes debilitating.
Yeah, it's very suppressive. So,
Suppressive,
yeah,
yes, yes,
so
yes.
so I didn't even think about it from a cultural standpoint, but that's
Yeah.
a big point you're you're bringing up. So you find that in the U.S. it's more of that taboo outside of the U.S. You're seeing a way more openness and embracing.
And depends on like some cultures. So like when you think
With the
about European cultures,
yes,
like sexuality, like you can see breast on TV.
yes,
But
yeah.
here in the US, a nipple shown is like a no. You can do cleavage, you can do side boob, but you
Yeah.
can't show a nipple.
I remember doing a research. I think this was in like high school, senior year of high school, research paper on Amsterdam and looking. Have you been there? Have you
Yes,
noticed? I mean,
red light district.
it's like so open, and I'm like, wow, this is like another world. They're exploring this sexuality, this pleasure on a whole nother level, and it's forbidden, right? You don't talk about it, especially women.
Yeah.
Some women are taught that it carries a lot of shame to even talk about wanting to be pleased.
And I'll
So
tell you where some of that starts. It starts with, as I mentioned before, the messaging and the shame, the body shaming, and the development phase of turning from a girl to a woman, and how you are to react when individuals are addressing you in a pleasing manner. So getting compliments can become, especially when you think back to like that pre-teen age, even getting compliments from girls, getting compliments from other family members, and then for some people it turns into a real negative, because then it's also like those compliments are bringing attention to something that I'm supposed to cover up. I'm supposed to not show that I have developing breasts. I'm supposed to not show that, you know, I'm getting wider hips. And then if you get that attention from the opposite sex, then it's now you fast. How am I fast? I'm just growing up. I'm just developing.
Exactly.
But those types of things become like, it's shameful then to wear your skin.
So let's take a deeper dive into this, because we got to peel back the layers. Where is that notion of I'm not supposed to and carry that this shame? Where is that coming from, in your opinion?
I think it comes from people trying to protect, but they don't know how to empower. So when they want to protect, then it turns into like that shame. It turns into like, if I can get you to not feel good about this, then I can get you to also not have other people make you feel good about it.
Gotcha. Well, we know the power of the subconscious thinking too. So it works.
Yeah.
Honestly, it works, because people can be conditioned earlier on and carry that shame, and that's the energy that they're pulling back to them, like, stay away from me. But the issue with that is essentially that people don't understand their power.
Right. So
and they would never step into their pleasure.
Yeah,
right?
And I tell this story a lot, and my mother, she's okay with it. For my nephew, she was teaching him that touching his genitals was nasty. And I said, that is natural. And if you teach him that it's nasty and that it's dirty, then somebody is going to be able to groom him and teach him that you can do this that pleases you with me, but not with your granny. And so I used to be a sex offender counselor.
Okay.
So that's that grooming type of, as you talked about, that when they're able to see their victims, because that subconscious is coming out in other behaviors, like, oh, I can't do this in public, but then you see them, you know, off to the side doing something that feels good, but somebody has told them that this shouldn't feel good.
That's the shame.
And exactly. And so my mother didn't understand the power of that messaging, but that was also because that's not how she was raised. So it becomes, when we're talking about cultures, it becomes a part of like generational things of, you don't know how to do things, so you repeat some of those same things. But you know, that's the definition of insanity. You can't keep repeating the same thing and expect a different outcome.
Yes, exactly.
And so that, you know, empowering piece and being able to embrace pleasure becomes something that is a narrative that we have to teach people how to do it. So starting young, being able to have that also for some of the older individuals as well, because as you said, it just carries on, and it gets to a point where you're like, why do I feel like I don't deserve pleasure?
Exactly. And then you get, by the time you realize that you're getting older, right? What you say, speak for yourself. And you're like, wait a minute, I done missed out on a whole lot here. Now what's going on? You know, I think for me, I'll just pull it back to me. It's something that, of course, you know, we've been talking for a while now about just pleasure, and it's something that I'm tapping into this new awakening, right? And it's just a beautiful energy, a beautiful divine feminine energy that I'm loving and I'm sitting in. I'm seeing my whole reality just shape shift. And I'm like, what is going on? And I know the more I embody this energy, the more that it's attractive, right? And so it's like, wait a minute, okay, what's going on? I had to pull you up, like, come, Dr. Joi, help me understand. What would you describe? What did you, give me the definition around what that is. And do you see other women experiencing similar situations?
So it is common for around that late 30s, early 40 time period to really start reflecting on life. And so for men, we would call it midlife crisis. And so that's when, you know, they go and they get the sports car, the motorcycle, but women, you'll also see that, and they'll change hair colors. You know, they'll start dressing a little, you know, they start feeling killing themselves.
Yes, yes.
And that is a beautiful thing. And so there's the human development side of it, but then there's also like, as I look at how I want to, for lack of a better way of saying it, close out my life, I don't want to keep doing some of those same things that were not helping me feel my best self. And then there's another element that sometimes comes in where people feel like, women feel like, I'm at a point where I have people looking up to me, whether it is family members, co-workers, or they're in different positions where it's like, you're not the senior, but you know, you got enough experience and you want younger people or other people that look up to you to also have some of that kind of glow that you're stepping into. And so now you want to get it and you want to be in that glow more often than not. So then you can also share that with them. Like, okay, yeah, you know, don't stress yourself over this, you know, live your best life.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
all of that, you know, living my life like it's golden, you know, those types of sayings become like how you start making decisions. And it's again part of that kind of life cycle where you know, you'll see things that somebody used to care about, they don't care about anymore.
Exactly. You just start letting everything go. Like, I don't care. I don't care. I think that's my favorite line lately. Like, I don't care. Like, because and it goes back to a point we were talking right before the show. We were talking about how these distractions show up, right? And I find that, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but I find that as I sit more in my energy, the more the pull comes to pull me out. It's like the masculine energy of work, right? Let's do this, let's do that. I got to do this. And I spent the majority of my life in that energy, right? Working in corporate America, climbing the corporate ladder, becoming what, you know, setting my mind to a goal and just achieving it. But I didn't realize that that was operating in a different energy. And so as I've been coming into more and sitting in this beautiful feminine side, that pull is, I get a million distractions. I mean, every minute I'm being pulled, a phone call, email, a neighbor, anything. You know, it's something that is saying, no, you can't sit there. You got to move. You got to keep me busy. And it becomes a distraction. I don't know if you've seen that or have heard that from others, but is it there to try to traumatize us, or what is this?
So I wouldn't say
sometimes it feels traumatic.
What I would say is it's a test of boundaries.
Yes.
And the test of boundaries is just something that the more you are open to new things, the more you're going to be tested because you don't have that experience, because it's new.
It's new, yeah.
And there's a question, I think, that every time when you have like new experiences, you just truly have to say, is this aligned?
Yeah.
And the uncomfortable piece, if you have been operating in corporate America, hustle, bustle, lots of different things that were less defined as what would seem like a distraction, because you knew like how to quickly, like, nope, this isn't going in the right direction, cut that off. Having something that is in a new direction is like, oh wait, I gotta think a little more about, is this something that I need to experience? So it seems like it's a lot more distractions, a lot more things, but it's just because you're in a new area and you're exploring something new.
Exactly. It's almost like you said, uncharted territory, and just walking a different path that you haven't walked before, like what's around the corner. And I think when you look at it from the standpoint of just being excited about it, right, you can kind of stay in it a little bit more as opposed to trying to control the outcome of this feeling. But this awakening to pleasure, it's so many levels to this, first of all. It is so many levels to this. So what do you see as some of the first signs of, or we talked a little bit about the challenges, but what about some of the first things that people need to be thinking about if they're new to exploring this new pleasurable place?
So we also did talk about, so my first book is called My World, and it's a manual of pleasure.
Okay.
And it is, the first 3 pages actually deals with a description of thinking about a pleasant experience. But then I ask different questions so that you can also not just tap into that pleasant experience, but you can actually go deeper.
Okay.
Understanding how your 5 senses operate when you are thinking about those pleasant experiences.
Yes.
One in particular that you want to focus on, you want to think about, what does it smell like? What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? All of those different things with your senses. What do I taste? Then it's going a little deeper with that same experience, because what oftentimes happens is the first time you answer those questions, you're really thinking about what you would say to other people.
Exactly.
Which then still includes some of those things, those messages that you're like, I can't say that. Because I don't know what other people are going. Yes.
And so kind of walk us through, like, give us the 5 senses kind of in an example, if that makes sense. I want to see how it all would play out for an individual.
So when I'm doing workshops, I use this example. So if you are at the beach, because a lot of people love water and they love beach atmosphere, and your most pleasant moment is you're on the beach and you're by yourself. It's a sunny day. It's in the morning.
Okay.
You can feel the sand on your toes, but in addition to that, you can feel the dew on your skin. Okay. So now you smell the salt water, you smell ocean, you have those senses, and what you're seeing is nothing but blue water all the way out to infinity.
I love it. Yeah.
And you're hearing the crashing waves. You're able to have a visualization that also matches what you're smelling. So even though you're not eating anything, you taste something that is going to help your saliva kind of get thick.
I can taste the salt water right about now.
Okay, so see, look, you got some experience with tasting salt water. Some people don't have that.
Ooh, but some seaweed. Not just kidding, but that is. It puts you in that moment. It's like you in present moment at that point.
And that's
tapping
the
into
first
something
one,
really powerful.
Yes.
Yeah.
But remember, I said that first one is usually you're saying everything that you think is acceptable. But then when you go deeper, and then you're like, well, actually, I'm nude on this beach.
Oh.
And so now now I feel I'm tapping into some deeper feelings that are because this is pleasant to me.
Yeah.
And then you start, considering okay, so yes, I'm still smelling this salt water and I'm still hearing the ocean, but then at the same time, I'm paying attention to my body.
Gotcha.
And there may be some things that's turning me on.
So it's taking that external and bringing it internal.
Yes.
That's the whole embodiment piece of it.
And that's when, again, that second time, when you start going a little deeper, but then I do this 3 times.
Okay.
Because the third time then is when you are now going again to that kind of deeper experience, and in this example, talking about now you're naked, then you might say, and then there's someone that's watching me. So now you start realizing I've got a little exhibitionist in me.
Okay.
Assuming
that you like who watching you.
But if you're an exhibitionist, you don't even care. You don't even know.
That's true. You're talking about some
It's
random.
Exactly. But it's just the thought that, someone
So is that a
might
level
see
that
me.
most folks, does everybody get there?
Everyone, but just in this example,
Gotcha.
but everybody goes deeper.
Gotcha.
And that's the whole point. It's like when you think about a pleasant experience, your pleasant experience might be in the kitchen baking cookies.
Yes.
But when you go into that second level, and it's like, well, you know what? It's, actually about, because there was an experience that I had that made this pleasurable. And so it's not even just me baking the cookies, it's me actually serving the cookies. So going deeper is like, okay, so the cookies are done, but now I'm putting it on the platter. And I like to put them on the platter, in a certain way. So now, what I'm feeling when I'm feeling the cookies is it is igniting an internal feeling for me of being able to serve, or it's igniting, so it's going
Tapping into
deeper.
certain things, parts of
Right.
your character.
Exactly.
Your love language, if you will.
There you go, because that's where I
Yes.
was going. Because then when you get into that third one, the same experience, you're again starting to realize, okay, so in this serving capacity, there's a little thing that is like what I really, really like. So it's like, the first time you answering the question, like, okay, yeah, here's what I like. Here's what feels good. Here's what pleases me. Then the second one's like, but here's what really pleases me.
Gotcha.
Here's what I really
Really
like.
like.
This is what I wouldn't necessarily, tell people, the first time, because I'm waiting to see if they like, huh? What,
Right.
you like to bake cookies? You waiting on
Right.
responses.
Exactly.
But then that third time, it's like, oh yeah, like this is what I really, really like. And it's from there that you start actually thinking about, how often do I do things that I like? How often do I have pleasant experiences? What are the elements that make something pleasing to me? So as you mentioned, love language, now you start looking and understanding all these different capacities of ways to express yourself, ways to receive love, ways to
Yes.
give love, and then just focusing on even self-love, you have
That's
to
the true
understand that.
awakening there.
Yes,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that self-love becomes a part of you being able to express to other individuals how you deserve to be loved
Speaking.
and
I
how you
love it.
deserve pleasure.
Yes, I love that. So where do you see people, do you see a difference between where men are versus women, or is it just kind of,
There's
all over the
definitely,
place?
yeah, there's definitely a difference, but ultimately it comes down to like that basic, if you know who you are and you know how to communicate who you are, and you are open to the other individual, then whether that is in a romantic situation, professional situation, family situation,
Yes.
all of those different things, then you're able to kind of have more love expression. But if you don't know yourself, if you don't know how to say things about yourself, and then if you're not open to other individuals, then like doesn't matter gender.
It's pretty universal at that point. It starts with you.
Exactly.
And that true embodiment is wakening up within yourself, getting that flame ignited within yourself. So self-love is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely. It has to start there.
Yeah.
And it can't be a false sense of self-love.
Exactly.
So when you talk about like some of the gender differences, there's oftentimes for men a false sense of self-love.
And how do you see that play out when you say a false sense of self-love?
Because there is a mask that they have worn that says, this is who I am. And when you ask, a few questions, then it's like, okay, yeah, you don't love that about yourself. Somebody told you that this
They're
is
supposed to be
yeah.
acceptable, and
Yeah.
so would you call it the ego self that's playing
Oh,
out?
absolutely,
Yeah.
but some of it is ignorance. And so I'll just use this example.
I was trying to be nice.
But no.
No, not that it isn't, but you're right. For lack of a better word, it is, because there's a lot of men that think they know, but they don't have a clue.
So I'm gonna give you one of the most controversial things that I do in workshops. And when I say it, especially a lot of heterosexual men are just like, When I talk about the anus and I talk about the nerve endings in the anus and how pleasing they are. Ain't nobody putting nothing in my butt.
Do you know how much
But
I hear this all day at sentiment sessions?
but the
Hear it all
thing
the time.
is, the anus has nerve sensitivities that are pleasing. And if you would be okay with a female having pleasure in in an anal way,
Yeah.
what's the difference? A booty hole is a booty hole.
Exactly. Let's just put it out there
So
because
this is why I say the ignorance
yes,
piece comes into play about how the body works, human development, all of that, sexuality, that, what I started off saying, that it's not just the intentional portion of a male saying like, yeah, I love myself. Some of that is that macho covering things up.
You were saying
And
something. You are really speaking it. I promise you. So I do hydrocolonic therapy, as you know, in sentiment sessions. And I've been trying to get more men, especially with issues with prostate health and things of that nature. The toxins are there in the intestines and they need to clean this out. And I know this ain't nothing pleasurable, but I got to just tell the truth. Most men, and I'm gonna just put it out there, most black men, African men, are like nothing's going in there. They have to demonstrate how macho they are. They come in, they like, and they losing it. And they, they're coming at a time where it's like they got a lot of issues going on and they're trying to get some help, or they're trying to come because the spouse is bringing them in and saying, you need to do this and try it. But it's that whole macho, don't touch me back there, But then when they try it and they see how it works, they like, oh, shucks, I'm addicted now.
Yeah.
But it's not stimulating that pleasure. So I'm trying to get people to think different about that. But I see what you mean. It's that macho. It's don't touch me, and
Yeah.
So when you have these workshops, do you have men come, and are they more receptive of understanding the anus?
But I don't care about that. Because my role is to educate.
Exactly.
And you can do what you want to do with the information. But what I also realize my role is to educate in the aspect of helping people understand others. One of the top reasons for suicide for teenagers deals with transgender issue or gender identity issues.
Gotcha.
And so having a safe space or having an adult that is not going to judge, that is going to be able to say like, okay, even if they don't have the answers, let me get you to a resource that does.
Gotcha.
Where it's like you can have this idea of like, yeah, this is nasty, but if they are enjoying it, then you can't just dismiss something that they have experienced that they enjoy.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So there is, just a deeper sense for me where it's like, I'm not going to just tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you the facts, the truth.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because that's also what brings some couples or some people that are not in a relationship to my workshops, because there's information that they don't know that they need to understand how the body works, how to help with certain situations, and how to even ease into where they feel comfortable, where it's like, I want to do this, but either I don't know how to tell my partner, or I want to do this and I've been, told that like I shouldn't masturbate. I want to do this. I've been told that pornography is bad. I want like all these different things, questions that they're wrestling with. And it's not that I'm telling you like, yes, do this. I'm just saying like, here are some additional pieces of information from all the research that I've been doing internationally, in books, in situations.
Right.
Like, so these are some different things to consider.
So let's take a step back with respect to when you have workshops with partners, and what are some of the most common concerns that they, you know what I mean? Like what are you seeing, or some things that are considered as the one partner saying this is something that I've been conditioned to believe is not good, and the other one is like, well, I never had that issue. I mean, what are you seeing?
So heterosexual couples, she ain't doing it like she used to.
What does that mean?
So that's the
When she took to get them, she said, I
Yeah.
recruited you already. Now.
right. Right. And so then you hear the other couple, the female saying, life. If there are children that's involved, caretaking, there's, stressors, like all these other things. And so then it becomes like a lack of understanding what turns the other individual on. Mm-hmm. So like with social media, like now you'll see a lot more of those examples, like, wash the dishes, take some of the load off of, the stuff
Exactly.
that are becoming, a lot of the domestic things that in a lot of the traditional relationships that she has to do, go pick up the kids, or you do the hair, or there's some of those things. But then one of the things that I also get into is understanding libido. And so it's like, there's not doing things the way that used to be, because there may have been, this is my role, and I wasn't really being pleased when I was in my 20s doing this. And now that we, have all these different things, we 20 years later, now as a woman, I'm in my 40s, I'm at the peak of my libido, and now you tired. Now your body, you don't have the energy.
But isn't there like science behind it? But men, of course, get older, and then women, we kind of have this, with age, increase, an uptick in our desires.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the piece that's that information that isn't understood. So then it becomes, okay, so how do we then match this where, you're saying that things aren't going to be the way that they, used to be, but if she's telling you like she was only doing that for procreation reasons, or she was only doing that to be a good wife, or she was only doing it for that reason, where now she's found what we talked about,
that were different.
Now we talk about that self-love, and it's like, well, I love myself not to sacrifice my pleasure for somebody else. And you can either get with this or not. Guess what? Dr. Joi told me about this device that will help me so that now I can have orgasms, and you can sit over there and watch.
And so do you see that as a disconnect too? Because the men are saying, okay, she didn't do it like she used to, but was he ever doing it for her? Or was the woman always the one giving so much of herself that she just, like you said in this example, she was denied her own pleasure, maybe not even knowing that she deserved to be?
Yeah.
Because I think about it, a lot of women have been conditioned to believe they are here for the pleasure of men.
Yeah. That's why African countries, they cut off the clitoris.
Yes.
The clitoris is only for pleasure. It's 8,000 to 9,000 nerves that come together that go throughout the body, and it's only there for pleasure. When the clitoris is stimulated, the vagina lubricates, the pupils dilate, the nostrils flare, you get a little goosebump, sometimes you get a little sweaty skin. Like all these different things go on with the body.
Yes.
So they like, oh no, we gonna cut this off so that you don't enjoy this.
Yeah, I actually saw a documentary on that a few years back, and I was really shocked at the practices that they were doing to young girls.
Yeah, yeah.
Very young girls. Like in some cases, like I guess before period. Age.
11, 12, and it's a part of like the culture.
Culture. It's a tradition that they practice, and it's accepted there. But I can get off into a million reasons as to how that even came about. But
those are the types of things that, like I said, information-wise, that even as far as like oral sex, she used to do it, now she don't. Well, your body looked a different way than it does now. So, like, it's having those real conversations,
right?
That is like, you don't turn me on like you used to, like when you was in your 20s and you had the muscles popping and all of this. And then for the, the woman, like her body went through changes as well. But even with her body,
she had some kids, she could pick up some little weight or whatever. Yeah.
But when you get to what we talk about, that peak libido time, your curves are sexy. You start feeling your body.
Yes.
You want all of this, juicy this, whatever these curves, all this. And that doesn't translate the same way to, so now that I feel better, I'm going to now get with my partner more.
Gotcha.
It doesn't translate that way because that
Then
communication
is-
hasn't stayed consistent from how things used to be in order to keep changing. So there's something called pleasure mapping.
Okay. Talk
And
to
so
me
with
about
the
that.
pleasure map, when I'm doing workshops, you draw your body and you start identifying with the Y areas that are pleasing to you.
Okay.
With the X, you're they're boundaries. Like,
So
this
is
a
it
no.
guidance to the pleasure mapping?
Yeah.
I mean, do you give like
It's a 90-minute workshop.
okay. So talk to me. So are you giving direction and saying what to explore, or just telling women or men to just play?
So usually,
How are you going about it?
I start off with, and I use music. So each song is usually like 3 or 4 minutes. So I ask one question, and you have 3 or 4 minutes. So step number 1 would be outline your body on this paper. So when you outline your body on the paper, you got 3 minutes, and you need the 3 minutes because you move from, similar to what we talked about with the first exercise, you move from the obvious to start thinking about other things. So you might need to go back and make sure that you have a nice neck that's there. Make sure that you are including your fingers, your toes. You start thinking about, you have ears. So somebody might just be drawing an outline and it's like, okay, wait, I got ears. So you want people to, when I talk about like guiding them, to really start thinking about their senses, because as we continue to go through, before we get to writing like your whys, you might have drawn a figure, but you needed to also include your backside.
Exactly.
So now you need to draw like the front view and here's the back view. And then to understand like erogenous zones, behind the knee is an erogenous zone. The small of the back, like there's so many different areas, that the bottom of your foot.
Gotcha.
So being able to then like go into more detail is the reason why it takes so long. And then we don't just stick with the Y's, we also again talk about the X's.
And I just want to clarify, this is about you exploring yourself, right? To really wake up bring that embodiment, right? And so
Yes.
you understand what you're feeling. Because I think it's important to understand how you feel before you can start going up into
But some people
understanding
don't know themselves enough.
Yes,
They only know how they feel when someone else is doing it.
Gotcha.
So this is
So
also
then they
the reason-
associate that feeling with the person.
But that's the
A
reason
lot
why
of
it ain't
people
just
do
one
that.
page in the book.
Right. A lot of people do that. They think
Yeah.
that, that I only experienced this with them. And
Yeah.
when you get into some trauma bonds or some soul
Yeah.
ties, because you think that energy that you're feeling is associated with that person, when in fact that's your.
Well, it could be that person.
They might touch you a certain type of way, but it's still you that's receiving
and
that energy, that surfacing. I mean, that's at least what I.
Well, and so there's a possibility of that, but then
Okay.
there's a possibility that it is just that person.
Oh, okay.
Because there could be, remember I talked about like your brain is your biggest sex organ.
Yeah.
And when we talk about intimacy, we're talking about spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, and physically. So there may be certain things that person does to you that makes you feel totally different than when somebody else did it.
Exactly.
Because of how you view that person.
I look at it from the standpoint of energy, right?
Okay.
And when we talk about magnetic resonance, we understand that it's like that attracts like, right? So if that person is waking up something in you, it was just that you and that person is on the same resonance for you to even get awakened.
I like that.
You get what I'm saying? So I look at it from the standpoint, oh, I have that, and they just match my frequency.
Okay.
And so that's what, and you're right, it is the individual that comes in. That's why we have such a big magnetic pull towards certain people versus others. And when you meet that person that ignites that flame, honey,
Yeah.
you stepping into something.
But then there's also a level of grace. Let's also talk about that. Because like if everybody only had one partner for experiencing pleasure from another person, then that would be, you know, something that you can kind of distinguish between, like, this is something that I like, and it's, you know, something that this person, like we were, as you talked about, like the magnet, you know, pulled it out. But then there's also the, if I had, let's say, 5 partners, the other 4 did this first one still ain't figured out how to get it the way that these other 4 did it. So I know I like this, but this person still hasn't tapped into it and pulled it out. But I haven't given up, you know, on this person. So that's why I'm like, there are some things that you can say, like, yes, I like this, and it is something that I like done to me. And it is something that I don't always experience with everybody the same way. This is why people, as you talked about the red light district in Amsterdam, this is why people hire prostitutes. This is also why people go to dungeons. Now that's a total different conversation. We can put a pin in that if you want to go.
I know Candy Barris was doing a lot of dungeons.
Well, Candy's dungeons are a little different than an actual dungeon. So
so there's a difference?
Yeah, so an actual dungeon is a place that has devices.
Okay, so is it like the 50 Shades type?
Yes.
Okay.
That would be an actual dungeon. Candy's was more of, so I used to be a bedroom candy consultant, that's how I know, and I did a lot of the dungeon experience with Candy. Her was more like a burlesque show. There were, you know, individuals that were, you know, teaching different techniques, but the use of devices is actually what a dungeon is. And our location of devices, and so using those different devices is what, like, can pull out for some people things that they don't get when they are not in the dungeon environment. So here's an example, and not to deviate too much, but there are many men that will go to a dungeon to be dominated. So they can be in a submissive role, because in their normal lives, in their relationships, they may have to be the dominant person.
So some it's a release for them, so to speak.
And some of that comes from also, like, some women not feeling comfortable initiating sex.
So I mean, so they just go and pay somebody to beat them.
So that
sign me up. Who want to come get beat? I'm gonna beat some ass.
That is one example way. When I say those devices, there are so
come to sentiment sessions where you get your I done found a whole new profession now.
So I am a trained dominatrix. And part of that is being able to also understand the spectrum of, like, a lot of people do think dungeons are only about spanking. And getting into, like, what BDSM is about is it's about power, trust, control, and authority. That's totally different than, in the lifestyle, we call it vanilla or regular relationships. And in regular relationships, it's about love, it's about romance.
It's a whole nother world, and that's going to be a separate podcast. We're going to get into the BDSM and the whole dominatrix on another show.
But that's
people just need to wake up right now. I just want people to wake up and understand, you know, what this hidden part of themselves is really about. You know, how did we get into that embodiment and just truly just start to heal a lot of this trauma and these wounds that have kept us from truly experimenting or experiencing just
the pleasure.
And everybody is deserving of it. It's a beautiful thing when you finally get it woken up.
And so getting back to talking about, like, the pleasure mapping, all those different things come out. Because you're not just doing the whys, your yeses, but then you're doing the X's, which for some people changes, well, everyone, it changes over time, but for some people more often than others. So I use the example of a woman that may have had sensitive nipples before she had a child. And then after she had a child, if she was breastfeeding, then now her nipples are no longer erotic for her. They're no longer a sensual
That's pretty
place.
common with women after
Right.
after conception. Yes.
And then I also use the example of talking about for men. A man that has maybe had surgery, he doesn't feel as, let's say, sensual in some of those areas if the surgery impacted.
Gotcha.
And so there's like a need to do your pleasure mapping on a regular basis. I would actually say every year.
Okay.
Because your body changes,
Yes.
your what you like changes, and then just even environmentally.
Is that age basically related, or is it other things that causes the?
It can be all of the above.
Okay. Okay.
Because it could be stress. And one of the things, so my third book, so I talked about the first one. The second one is communicating your pleasure.
Okay.
And so the third one is only available in audio, only available through my book club. That one deals with, as some of the things we were talking about, perimenopause, taking medication, cancer situations, loss and grief. And that may not just be a person, that could be the loss of a job, that could be a loss of something that, you know, was valuable, that really meant something to you, and going through all those different stages.
Yeah, because stress definitely has a big impact on that pleasure. Like, you
Yeah.
don't want to be bothered. You might not, you know, I'm not feeling it. Don't look at me.
But
you know.
what we're talking about is it's just different.
Yeah.
So you have moved away. If you have had experiences where you're like, you know what, I gotta put more water-based items in my diet.
Yeah.
So me having like a glass of wine to relax, and then, you know, like helping me have some of those erotic moments, that's not something that, you know, I'm interested in anymore. So now I don't want the sushi on my body and you eating it off of my body. Now we gonna put cantaloupe. We gonna use watermelon. You know, so those
Let's make
types
this
of things.
healthy.
But right, those are, you
This
know,
is a
some of the
holistic.
things. Exactly.
I get it.
Those
yeah.
are some of the things, are like we talked about pre-show, some of the things with cancer causing agents in it.
Yeah.
And when people, you know, have a diagnosis and there's something that they specifically have to change, even when you think about how it used to be necessarily like pleasing to their body, having a massage with baby oil, and then they like, oh no, I don't need to use baby oil. I need to use, you know, something else that is high quality grapeseed oil that's, you know, going to not just sit on top of my skin, but it's also like all of those different things are things that, like, as you go through life, it could be environmental, it could be, you know, something that is tangible, it could be a situation where now you got, you know, somebody else in the house, it could be medical, so many different things.
Yes.
So that's why I say, like, every year to be able to redo your pleasure map. And the last one, so I talked about the Y, I talked about the X, but then there's a O.
Okay.
And the O is what I'm open to.
Okay.
So this then gives agency for any exploration.
Gotcha.
This also gives like that, I heard about this, but I don't really know, or I'm curious about this, or, you know, I'm looking at my body and I realize, like, we ain't never really figured out if I have some erotic sensations in my hand. So now, you know,
Is that a thing?
Absolutely. Have you ever put your finger in somebody's mouth and pulled it out because you had them taste something?
See?
Absolutely.
Well, I don't kiss them. No,
but
but
that's an example of like, you know, that
you're right.
type of.
You're so right.
Yeah. And even as far as like when you think about massaging and getting a hand massage.
Yeah.
And so like so many.
Yes. Now that I think
people,
about it, it's just, it's so many different places that we could just tap into.
Absolutely.
And this pleasure mapping also is a great communication tool too.
Yes.
Because once you know yourself, then you're able to
And that's why it's in the first book. Because it's
Yes.
in the manual.
Gotcha.
And then when you get to the second book about communicating that, then you can start looking at verbal ways versus nonverbal ways. But
Gotcha.
when I wrote the first book, it was like you can hand it off to somebody and be like, you ain't got to practice for the last person anything on me, because I'm giving you the manual to me. I'm letting you know what I like, and it goes from mild to wild.
Exactly.
So if
There
you
is
want
a
to role
scale
play,
to this
if you
thing.
want a
Yes.
coupon book and you want to like have some different ideas of like
Yes.
ways for us to like play some different games and
Yes.
things, here go the book. I don't need you doing no guessing game.
So what are some of the things that you see in terms of outcomes with the people that you
Well, I'm
work with?
invited to a wedding in Aruba in
Okay.
October. So
Okay, well, all right.
So
So
we make it
obviously it's working.
we are making it happen. I think they're depending on what the presenting issue is. Because for some it is, as we talked about, the lack of self-love. So we got to get to that point. We got to get to the knowledge. We've got to get to the education piece and the kind of emotional part of being able to understand like you deserve pleasure.
Yes, exactly, and it comes back to that. And like we were talking in in the beginning around some of the root cause and this conditioning process, and it's really trying to change that paradigm, right? Do a paradigm shift. What do you see some of the challenges with the paradigm shift? I could
No support.
no support. And when you say no support
So,
from,
because when you're trying to change yourself and you're in an environment with other people, the minute that you haven't communicated that you're making a change, they're going to keep reminding you that you're doing something different. And so then that tension comes into place because it's uncomfortable doing new things.
and that's kind of what I was tying back to about the distractions. As you start to feel that, the world starts trying to pull you back. People are going to try to pull you back. They're going to, because I think what it is and what I see is that you're moving from that external validation to internal validation, to self-validation. And when you go into that self-validation, it's almost like you're vibrating on a whole nother frequency, right? And so but you still have people around you that used to tell you how you should think, how you should feel, what you need to experience, or how you need to please them. And moving from that shift to the new self,
You
have to be aware of
and
that.
you have to have like-minded people around.
Exactly.
And so that's the
Exactly.
not even just like when I say lack of support from the people around you, you have to then intentionally put yourself in places, spaces, around people, have things that are going to remind you of where you're trying to move towards.
Exactly. And how to stay and keep that energy once you start awakening. And that's one
That's
of the
why I
reasons.
wear things.
Exactly.
Yes, they love.
And this is one of the things I do with cinnamon sessions is because the work we do is all about embodiment. It's all about healing. It's all about bringing people into that alignment so they know that, know themselves, right? And that's why it's important to remove those toxins, do that energy healing, do all of those things that keep you balanced and in alignment. So I think that's one of the things that we probably need to be partnering on. Like, hey, get a colonic, go get some energy and breath work done while you do this pleasure mapping. I guarantee you we're going to be going to many weddings from there, because you're going to attract. Now you got all this stuff that's been blocking you out.
Yes.
You understand who you are. Now you're attracting this new version of yourself. And that is true healing.
Yeah.
That is true awakening.
Yes.
I love it.
And you get to continue to grow in it.
Exactly.
So we, with a group
evolving.
that we call them Lovers in Training, LIT.
Okay.
And it's on the I Declare Love. And I'm with the love engineer, Alex, that is like wonderful with explaining a lot of how you grow in love.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
I
Rumi,
love it.
Rumi,
I love it.
The poet Rumi.
You got to try. Yeah, you all have to try out. Tell them again what the podcast is.
It's I Declare Love.
I Declare Love. I've listened to a couple of shows. I think you are doing amazing work, which is one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on to Cinema Sessions. Just powerful, powerful information and great insights for people to tap into and tune into. I know we're coming at time, but I want you to, if you had to give like one key piece of information for people in terms of awakening to their self-love or to how to evolve from there, what would that be?
Ooh, one key.
You don't even have to be one, but just some good information that people can just take away from today's segment.
From today's segment, I think it's you deserve pleasure.
Okay.
And so once you really think about,
that's powerful.
I deserve pleasure, you turn it into your affirmation. No matter what stage of understanding pleasure you are in, you start realizing that it starts with you, self-love, and then being able to figure out, am I communicating that? And then am I open to other people's definitions of how they want to be loved?
Absolutely.
And that love will then bring about that pleasure that continues to make people smile.
Yeah.
Because they feel good.
Yes. And when we leave with the heart, I mean, hey, it's the possibilities are just endless.
Yes.
So it's a lot to put out there when you in your energy. I love it. So where can people find you? Can you give your information?
Yes. So I've got a few different projects going on, but you can find all of them on Instagram at Everything's Sexy, 2 S's in the middle, EveryThingsSexy. And you can also find me on Facebook, Everything's Sexy LLC. I think knowing that I've got a book club.
Yes, so you got some events coming up too. Talk about the events that you have coming up, and of course this is a captain.
They don't know that for you. So the
wearing all these hats, I love it.
Yeah,
I love it.
So the book club encompasses understanding not just the books that I've authored, but kind of some of that foundational information. And it's a virtual platform, but we will have some in-person events. Hopefully, we can have some, and
of course,
with sentiment sessions and have, a lot of exercises. What we
that
rescheduled.
it's just postponed.
Yeah.
This is the intro of what you all can expect on, but even more. We're going to go dive deeper.
Yeah,
okay?
look,
So
she ain't even let me. I got stuff. She ain't
should-
let me pull it out. I'll show y'all these.
Well, we don't want.
nipple
We're trying
clamps.
to maintain an air of mystery here, but just know that this workshop
we got
is.
little things like this. What is this used for? So y'all got to come to
This
the
was
workshop.
part 2. This is part 2. This is I'm strategic.
We gonna do the workshop.
This is all strategically planned. But thank you for.
But if they do the book club, then they'll have the foundation type of information, and there's of course that community that you can tap into.
Yes.
And then one of the culminating events for the book club is, as Tyler was alluding to, I'm also a U.S. Coast Guard Master Captain.
Yes.
And so I have a yacht that I am going to have more events.
Yes, we're going to have some cinnamon sessions on the seas.
Okay, I love it. And so being able to understand the benefits of water, also being able to have a new luxury, intimate experience.
Yes.
And
I love
share a lot of what you may have learned in the book, some questions though that you may have. And for example, when I did this virtually during COVID, talking about some of the more popular topics at that time, or kind of as we started off, some people have questions about other cultures and international situation. So we'll be talking about that. I also have a international retreat. We're going to Jamaica
Yes.
to do Mild
Yes.
Wow. That's in July. So
I'm
that's
looking
also
forward to it.
that's
Come
also
join us.
on the retreat. My partner, who is a mental health psychiatrist, does a lot of the mild and yeah, I pull in the wild, and so everybody
Let's
will have
love
like
it.
individual experiences, because we do vet all of the individuals that are participating. We limit it to 10. So being able to go out on the adventures in Jamaica is fun. And then, yeah, I've got products that people can purchase.
Yeah, and just talk a little bit about the products that you have. I mean, this is more of when you're ready to really to get into the self-pleasure mode
And
and
to learn
to
even
learn.
what pleases you.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
like one of the ones that I like to show, which is the simplest one that looks like a lipstick, is hiding from me now. Okay, here we go. And so
It's
because this
real.
looks like a lipstick, this is actually a vibrator. And when you turn this on, please know that this is a bullet, and bullets do not go inside you.
Okay.
Bullets stay on the outside. And so with this, you'll also be able to feel vibration here on the tip, or if you want to have the longer portion of it, you can also use this to stimulate your sinuses, to relieve sinus pressure.
See,
That's just, you know.
multifunctional. I
Right.
like that.
But for a clitoral stimulation, because some people have never had an orgasm, and so to understand that 85% of women need clitoral stimulation in order to have an orgasm, you knowing how to stimulate yourself becomes also a way to help somebody else figure out how to stimulate you. And then there are, so many other, because you can use this and go up the shaft of the penis. You can use this in so many other areas as
Ooh,
well.
Dr. Joy, I promise you got all the little
And
secrets
it
going.
looks like lipstick, so you can hide it in your purse.
And we gonna have to bring you back for part 2 on how to explore all these products that you have in this
Yes.
bag.
That's what we're gonna do with the workshop. So we're gonna reschedule the workshop. So hopefully people get to know me and they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I want more. I want to hear
And
more about this.
I just want to take away the shame or the embarrassment from all of this, and to just really allow people to come together and just explore this in a very mature, adult way,
Yes.
a respectful way, but also understanding that you deserve to have fun, to awaken, to be just in your body.
Yes.
Just explore it, and it's okay.
Yes.
Oh, it's okay with yourself, with your partner, but also when you feel that energy, when you know who you are, your whole life just changes. And it doesn't have to necessarily be in a relationship. It could be within any type of environment. Dr. Joy,
Feeling
I
good.
want to just thank you so much for coming on to Sentiment Sessions. I appreciate all the feedback that you've given us. We got some great things coming up. I'm glad that we got the chance to at least give the people a little bit of a little teaser, right? But thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
And thank you. I appreciate you all for tuning in to Sentiment Sessions, and more to come. We got some great content coming up, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. And let's get to awakening. Get them pleasure zones all activated. But it starts with you first. Let's get centered. And you can always start with getting a colonic at Sentiment Sessions. Thank you all for joining.